I read a lot of romantic comedies this month, but are we surprised? No. Hi guys, welcome back to the channel. Now today I am back with another video where I review a bunch of 2020 romance arcs that I have received so kindly from publishers. I was granted e-galleys of these books because of during this pandemic and during this crisis, publishers have stopped giving out physical copies of the books, which is completely fine anyways because I tend to read ebooks a lot faster versus reading a physical copy anyways, so I'm totally fine with that. I've been reading my books in a weird manner so far, and let me just explain how is it weird. So basically I am a mood reader, so I tend to read a one genre at a time, and I tend to focus my attention on one genre if I feel like that is the genre that I want to read. But not only do I focus on the genre now, I also focus on the publisher. So that is why there are some videos posted on my channel where I specifically focus on each individual publisher. So there has been a video where I've read a lot of Berkeley romances that are coming out this year. There was another video where I reviewed a bunch of forever romance books, and now so this is the time where I'm going to be reviewing a bunch of Avon romances that are going to be published this year or that has already been published already. And these are all romance novels, these are all romantic comedies, and I want to give you an informed opinion on these books and what I feel about these books and what I feel like that you should put on top of your TBR, and maybe just some that you could probably just like move it down a few notches on your TBR pile. But anyways, let's get started on all the romantic comedies that I've read. So the first romantic comedy book that I want to talk about is a book that is actually coming out in June 2020. It's called Take a Hint, Dani Brown, and it's by Talia Hibbert. And this title always gets me because it's a Brown sister novel. So it means that there was a book before it that was about another sister with the last name Brown, but that one was called Get a Life, Chloe Brown. So I always get confused between like which sister we're talking about. So this one is Dani Brown's story. And Dani Brown is a PhD candidate. So she has her master's degree and she's also a professor at a university with a very intelligent background. Like she's very smart. She loves being geeky. She loves being nerdy. And she also doesn't like to be in relationships. So when she has the opportunity to be in a relationship, so for example, when she hooks up with some random people and they suddenly catch feelings and they want to move forward, she doesn't want any part of that. She just basically pushes the emergency button and ejects herself out of the situation. So what happens is that she also has a buddy or a friend at university who just so happens to be the security guard, and his name is Zafir. And Zafir is Muslim and Dani Brown is Black. So we already have a very diverse couple that I have yet to see in a lot of traditionally published romances that I'm always rooting for because I love diversity in my romances. And what happens is that Dani gets stuck in an elevator. So Zafir, being the hero of the story, literally pries open the elevator doors and carries her out of the university campus, and which to their dismay, a bunch of people see it and record it, and they blow up in popularity on Twitter and basically every social media platform. They are the bae couple. They are the couple that everybody wants to be and everybody's infatuated with. Everybody thinking that they are actually a couple, they decide to embrace a fake relationship because Zafir actually has a program that he is currently organizing and operating for non-for-profit, and he is helping male athletes try to find their voice and try to speak about their emotions because Zafir himself deals with a lot of mental illnesses such as anxiety, and he used to have severe depression. So now he wants to have a safe space for younger boys to have the ability to express themselves. And I just love this mental health rep inside the book, especially from a hero that is described to be very buff and bulky and basically the manly man character, but definitely he is not a stereotype and he cares a lot about expressing himself. And also he reads a lot of romance novels. Like he was described as reading a lot of Harlequins at one point too as well. And I don't know, I just love Zafir. I feel like Zafir is like the perfect book boyfriend in this book. He was so great and he was so understanding of our main female character who didn't want to be in a relationship, who was always scared of being intimate with another person on an emotional level, and someone who was basically a commitment phobe. And I gave this book a 4 out of 5 stars. The only reason why I took a star off was because I kind of grew tired of the main plot line of being someone who doesn't want to be in a relationship because they think that they are not good enough, or they think that they can't handle someone else's love. While I do kind of understand that insecurity, it sometimes gets a little frustrating and a little bit annoying because it's like, just take a chance. Just take a chance, take a hint, Danny, because Saphir is the one for you, and Saphir will be there always for you as well. I really like this book as well because they also supported each other in a lot of things. So when Saphir was going through a lot of anxiety attacks, Danny was there every step of the way and helping him come out of an anxiety attack. So I definitely recommend you to pick up this book. So the next novel that I want to talk about is not a new release. It actually came out last year already, but I just kept putting it off for like the longest time simply because I didn't have a physical copy of the book. It was never going on sale at my like bookstores, and I didn't want to pay $20 for it. And plus my friend Lacey from Lacey Book Lovers actually told me that she didn't like this book at all. And so I was like, it's not worth spending money on this book. But when the book came available on audiobook format at my public library, I just dove right in. I'm so glad I forced myself to listen to this audiobook. And the book is called No Judgments by Meg Cabot. And now this book is about a girl named Bree. And Bree recently had a troubled relationship where she is heartbroken. She doesn't want to be in a relationship anymore after that because she's just been so hurt by someone. And she goes into this little town in Florida, and it's like an island situation. It's like, I think it's like the Florida Keys. So it's not a surprise that I don't know geography, especially American geography. So it's just a small little island where it's a small town where a lot of people just hang out there as a tourist, or they just kind of like live there to retire and to have a great life. And Bree is known as fresh water there. She's new to there, and nobody really everybody likes her, but then also at the same time there's this man named Drew that doesn't like her and thinks that she is annoying and that she will just she's just in town for a bit, she's gonna leave the town in a couple of months or a couple of weeks. So Drew doesn't really want to pay more attention to her and doesn't want to give her the attention she deserves. And so Bree and Drew are stuck on this island when a hurricane hits, and Bree's parents want her to get the heck out of there. Bree's very stubborn and she doesn't want to leave, and she is going to force herself to stay in this island even though a hurricane might actually kill her. And Drew is there because he's grown up there. He returned back there and he just wants to take care of his house that he built that is apparently hurricane proof. This is the story of basically Drew and Bree saving every single animal on the island that was left behind because everybody fled the island during the hurricane crisis. So this one was a good book in my opinion, because when I was listening to audiobook, I thought that there was a very strong attraction between Bree and Drew. I felt the chemistry through the audiobook and I felt very warm and cozy. I especially also really liked the animal mentions. Now, if you guys don't really know me, because I don't really talk about myself that much, but I'm not really into animals and I'm not really into pets. So when I was reading this book and there were so many mentions of dogs and cats and other creatures and other things, I found myself actually caring a lot about them, and I found it so cute when Drew really cared about dogs and really cared about sheltered animals, and it was just so heartwarming and I loved it so much. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars. So the reason why I talked about No Judgments before another arc that I read was because I actually read the second book in the series after No Judgments. So this series is actually called the Little Bridge Island series, and book number 2 is called No Offense, and No Offense actually comes out in August 2020. Now, as soon as I got the arc of this book, I dropped everything and I picked this one up, and I wanted to read it right away because I just finished No Judgments and I just wanted to go back onto that island and go back to revisit the small community that kind of just always tries to get into each other's businesses. So No Offense tells the story of a new island person again. So she just came to the island to be a librarian for the library, and she wants to restart the library, rejuvenate the programs. She's doing things with the kids, she's doing things with the adults and the teens, and she is very creative and she really cares about the patrons in her library. So much to the point that she takes care of a lot of people, and she also tends to stick her head in a lot of other people's businesses sometimes. So when an incident happens where she discovers a newborn babe in a bathroom stall in the library, she can't help but stick her head into the sheriff's business and tries to help the sheriff on the investigation and help to try to figure out who the mother is, where the baby's gonna go afterwards, and if everybody is actually safe. And this book was so good. I described this book on my Instagram stories as like kind of like a newish, oldish 2000s contemporary novel. If you guys don't know what I'm talking about, it's those mass paperback novels that were very popular way back in the 2000s with like not very zany writing, because she didn't write a lot of zany writing in this one, which I appreciate it because zany writing is sometimes a little bit hard to get into. This one had normal writing that we see today, but it had that old comfort, cozy feel. So this one was definitely a very cozy romance between a librarian and a sheriff that is very strict and who wants to just follow the rules and regulations of his job. He wants to raise his teenage daughter correctly, and he doesn't want to get distracted by a librarian who is dressing in quirky, cute clothing, who always cares about people, and who also makes his heart flutter. I really like this romance. And this one had a mystery element to it, which I really enjoyed as well. Normally I don't like mystery, but this one I was like reading faster and faster because I wanted to figure out who did it and what's going to happen. I gave this one a 4 out of 5 stars, and this one comes out in August 2020. So the next arc that I read from Avon Books is You Had Me At Ola by Alexa Daria. And when this book was revealed, like when this cover was revealed, everybody was going crazy and wild for it on Instagram. I remember all my friends just like posting the cover and talking about how gorgeous it is. And come on, just take a look at it. It is really pretty. And there's this thing that I do where I don't actually read the synopsis of the books because I don't want to spoil it, and I just kind of want to walk in blind. And sometimes when I'm very confused, I kind of like stop the book and just go flip back and just read the synopsis. So when I started reading this one, I actually didn't know that this one is about an actress. And if you watched my other previous video where I talked about the Happily Ever After playlist by Abby Jimenez, I didn't like that book because it had a Hollywood element to it, because I think that that element is very fabricated and is very fake. I don't connect with the characters as much because they are celebrities, and clearly I am not a celebrity, so I don't understand their hardships. So I was a little bit wary when I walked into You Had Me At Ola, because I was like, here we go. This is going to be the very superficial romance once again, where the media kind of gets in the way and it's just like, it's annoying. But this one actually tells a story about a girl named Jasmine, and Jasmine is Puerto Rican and she is also half Filipino, so there is like a mixed diversity in this, and I really appreciate that too as well, because hello, we need more representation in romance, and I'll always be an advocate of that. And she has starred in a lot of telenovelas, and she has a chance of being a star in a big television series that has been picked up by an American TV show producer. So picture Passion Flicks, and she's been casted in this like TV streaming series, and it's going to be like half Spanish, half English, and it's going to be telling the story of this high-powered executive female. And her co-star is a man that's really popular in South America. He starred in a lot of films, he starred in a lot of television series and telenovelas, but the problem is that he's getting older, and he's starting to feel that he's losing his grip in the industry, and this is his chance to really push himself onto the main stage of Hollywood and America so that he can really get the bigger projects and earn a lot of money, because he also has a secret back home where he requires a lot of money. And this is the story of them going through the motions of being in character and filming the show that is set to premiere, but also ending up falling in love. So the only problem that I have with this story is that basically I found it really hard to be interested in the story. I thought the writing was fine, but I just thought that the main storyline was kind of boring. Like, I didn't know where it was going half the time. I didn't feel any anticipation. Like, I was waiting for things to happen. And this book actually included like scenes of the television series, and I found those more interesting than the storyline, which is troubling, because usually those extra scenes that we get, I usually skip those and skim those because I don't care. They don't really add any value to the story. But I was racing towards those extra scenes as opposed to like reading the actual book. So I think that really did tell me something. Overall, I was just kind of very disappointed in this story because I thought it to be a mediocre story at best. It was like a flat 3 the more and more I read it, and then I think I bumped it down to a 2.5 afterwards because the ending just got a little too crazy, got a little too messy. I thought our characters were too stubborn, and I thought our female character Jasmine was just not understanding of our main male character Ashton at all. Like Ashton has his own reasons, and Jasmine never like understood it. And then when she did understand it, I was like, it's already too late. Don't even try to pretend that you understand it. This book actually comes out in July 2020. So anyways, let's move on to the next book. So the next Avon arc that I read was Tools of Engagement by Tessa Bailey. And if you guys don't know the series, it's basically called the Hot and Hammered series. And it started off with Fix Her Up. And then we have Love Her or Lose Her. And then now we have Tools of Engagement, which tells the story of our older sister, Bethany, who is basically an ice queen. She is described to be beautiful. She has blonde hair, icy blue eyes. She's picture perfect, immaculate. She always makes herself look like she is a model that just walked off the runway, and she also makes herself look like that she has her life together and that she is confident and professional at always. So if you guys didn't read the series yet, I highly recommend that you read the series before you actually read Tools of Engagement, because you just don't really understand the storyline and the other characters that are playing into the book. So this story follows the main plot line that Bethany is actually trying to start up her own home renovation business where she wants to flip houses. And because she lives in a small town, it's really hard for her to start her own business since there's only one other business that actually flips homes and renovates them and sells them off, and that's her family business. So if she were to start a business, then she would actually be competing against her own family. And the reason why she is struggling with this is because she wants more creativity, she wants more power in the decision making, and she also wants to take on bigger projects instead of just modeling the house before it goes up on sale. And she wants to be noticed that she is actually smart and that she is a business woman. So her brother is very difficult to deal with and very difficult to read. I have major problems with our brother that is in this book because he is a complete jerk and a complete asshole, and he is not supportive at all. And I was very frustrated with him the whole entire way. And if you ever needed a villain, it's him. He's the villain in the story. So Bethany is going on to this road where she is going to start her own house flipping business, and she actually gets a house, and that's her main project. The only problem is that she actually doesn't have a crew to start the project with. And then we have Wes, who is a major flirt in town, who just came to town to basically take care of his niece and also flip houses and make money and earn money. But then as soon as his sister comes back from leaving the town, he's going to forget about the niece and just move on to a different city. So he's just kind of like in and out of this town. So Bethany doesn't want anything to do with Wes because he is a player and he constantly flirts with everyone. And Bethany has that insecurity towards Wes because Wes is actually 23 years old and Bethany is 30. So she always thinks that Wes is just a younger boy who's trying to play with her emotions, try to toy with her, so that Wes can get some points. But then afterwards, Wes doesn't actually really care. So Bethany has that insecurity. And then what happens is that Wes volunteers himself to join in on Bethany's project of flipping that house because Wes can't really deal with her brother anymore, and Wes wants to stand up for Bethany. And this is the story of them flipping a house, but also with the weird competition line that happens. So basically a TV producer picks up on the fact that a brother and sister are actually competing against each other, and they want to actually put it on television. So it's like this HGTV random television competition that happens, and it's like, it doesn't add anything to the story, but there's cameras everywhere. And this is the story of us trying to figure out their insecurities and trying to figure out if they're actually gonna push past it and work through it together. Overall, I enjoyed this one, but I didn't like it as much as the other ones. I think this one is my least favorite of the whole series. I really loved the first one, Fix Her Up. I really loved the second one, Love Her or Lose Her, because I thought that one was a very emotional one about a married couple that is breaking up. And then this one, I just didn't feel as much for those books because I had a big problem with Bethany. I thought that Bethany's insecurities were very relatable in the very beginning, but then it just hit me wrong and it never got better, and I just didn't care afterwards. I never saw any improvement. I never saw any character development as opposed to West. So I ended up giving this book a 3.5 out of 5 because while it did make me cry, I had to take a star off because I didn't like Bethany as a character, and then I had to take like another star off because everything wrapped up very perfectly in the end. And I get it because it's like romance novels, but also at the same time it doesn't have to be that perfect. And that book comes out in September 2020. So the next romance novel that I want to talk about is Loathe Her at First Sight by Suzanne Park. And if you guys don't know who Suzanne Park is, she is a debut author that debuted this year with 2 novels. So this is her second novel that's coming out this year and is coming out in August 2020. Her first book, The Perfect Escape, has already come out in I think April 2020, like in the early weeks of April 2020, and it was a YA novel that came out from Source Books. But basically, Loathe Her at First Sight is her first rom-com novel. The only problem that I have with this book is that the marketing is very bad. So it's marketed as like a chick lit, or it looks like a chick lit novel. It's marketed as like a romance novel. So when I was walking into the novel and when I was starting it, I got those vibes and I understood it, and I was like, yeah, I'm really liking it right now. But then as we progressively moved forward with the book, I realized that I don't think it's really like a rom-comedy. It's more like a women's fiction novel. There is a lot of like heated debates against women's fiction versus romance, but basically a short definition is that women's fiction novels tend to have the romance take a back seat. It tends to not always have a romance, and it tends to discuss more about social issues and a lot about issues regarding women. So this book tells a story about Melody, and Melody is obsessed with creating video games. So she recently got into the industry because she was tired of her old job, and now she's in this industry that is completely male dominated. And she, after dealing with another sexist pig in her office, she rambles off to her friend and tells her about like this crazy game idea featuring male strippers and like zombie apocalypse and a lot of like guns and shooting. And her boss overhears, and her boss suddenly thinks that that is the best idea for a game, and they decide to actually launch it. So this is the story of her working through that game and trying to get that game onto the market, but also dealing with a lot of sexist comments that are happening in the office, a lot of sexist comments that are happening in the community, and a lot of things that are happening in the community and in the world that is impacting her from actually getting this game to be launched. And this book includes a lot of feminism and a lot of feminist topics in it that I really appreciated and really liked, because I didn't know the extent of how bad the video game community can get, because I actually don't play video games, so I'm not really well versed in that industry and in that community world. But after reading the experiences that the community has put Melody through, I am disgusted and appalled. It was very like angering, so keep that in mind. So also this book actually features a romance, but it's kind of like very secondary. I mean, it was cute at first, but it's definitely not like a steamy hot romance that is like really there as opposed to all the other books I just talked about. So this romance is actually between Melody and an intern, and the intern is like near Melody's age, so like don't freak out and think this is like a very severe like age gap difference romance. And it's this man named Nolan, and Nolan's actually finishing his MBA, and he needs to have a internship in order to continue his MBA. And so his uncle is actually the president of the gaming company, and he just gets an internship through nepotism, and he is thriving and living his life, and he is also helping Melody through getting her game to launch. And there is like kind of like a very brief enemies to lover romance element to it, but it quickly diminishes and becomes like kind of like a friends to lover romance, which is kind of cute. But once again, the book fully focused, like from the 50% mark, it fully focused on her experiences in the community and basically being bullied and being ridiculed. I gave this one a 3 out of 5 stars because I enjoyed the writing. Other than that, I also had issues because it's so obvious that we know who's the person doing all these like commenting on like these community forums, but like nobody knows. But I'm like, it's so obvious. Who else can it be? And when it was revealed, I was just like, finally. So this book comes out August 4th, 2020. So the last book that I want to talk about is You Deserve Each Other by Sarah Hoggle. And now this book is actually not published from Avon Books. This book is actually published under Putnam Books, and it's like basically Penguin Random House. And I was not approved an ARC of this book, so I couldn't read it before it got released, but it was a most anticipated novel on my checklist, on my TBR list. And for reasons I don't know why, because I never read the synopsis, I didn't know who Sarah was, I didn't know what the book was about because I never read the synopsis. So why is it on the top of my TBR list? Because I'm a sucker for a cute cover, and look at this cover. It's gorgeous. I liked it. I thought it was going to be a great romance. So when I was reading it, I was shocked to realize that this book is actually about a couple that's already engaged that is going to go through with a wedding, even though our female character is going through a lot of cold feet and realizing herself that maybe she has fallen out of love with our main male character, and that she is struggling with her emotions, and she's struggling with the fact that she needs to commit herself to this man that she might actually despise. And then she soon realizes that he actually feels the same way, and that he's doing all these little things to annoy her so that he can break her, so that she can break off the engagement. And there's this whole storyline where basically she wants to get out of the engagement, but she can't because she can't pay her future mother-in-law back with all the down payments to the venues and the food and the flight. So she is willing to subjugate herself to a literal marriage in order for her to not pay back her dues. And I just thought that that whole storyline was weird from the very start, because I couldn't buy it. Like, it just didn't seem realistic to me that someone would actually subjugate themselves to a marriage because she didn't want to pay back the loans. Like, I get that the money is a lot of money, but also, like, is this like not something that you could bring to court so that you could get the lawyers to fight it off so that you don't have to pay back like the mother-in-law for all these things that you never even agreed on in the first place and that you don't even want at your wedding? Like, it just confused me. So I had to extend my belief a lot when I was reading this book from the very beginning. But then I started realizing that these two characters actually really hated each other, and it was a very unhealthy way. I found that this relationship was toxic, and I didn't want these two characters to be together because they clearly are not good for each other if they treat each other this way, if they taunt each other this way, if they make themselves vulnerable but then have the other person shut them down and to basically traumatize them in some way. I just didn't appreciate this relationship, and I had this very long angry rant that I had with my friend who was reading it at the same time as me, and I was just telling her about like how could she do this, and I was like literally listing off all these like main bullet points of like why this is awful. And for me personally, I felt that we had our main female character who made a lot of issues and made a lot of problems, and I didn't really like her personality anyways. But then my friend told me that basically she felt the same way about the male character. I guess I just wasn't reading too much into the male character, so I can't really pick up his like issues. But I'm sure if I go back and I like reread the book, I would know that they were both equally bad, and I'm not just shitting on a female character. One of the main things I had with the female character was that she had very low self-esteem in herself, and she kept projecting it to the male character. And I didn't like that at all. Like, she would tell herself that she would needs to cry for a week, she needed to die, and she is a loser and she doesn't deserve anything. And then after, like, she'll just like project it to like the male character in a subtle way, but you would pick it up if you were to actually read it like closely. And I would like to also mention that the reason why she doesn't feel competent and she doesn't feel like that she is worthy is also because she's dating a man. He's a dentist or something, and he makes a lot of money, he has job security, and he constantly makes these like remarks about like how you don't have to work because I can pay for everything for you, and it just snubs her and makes her feel bad about herself, although it was later on explained in the book why he said those things, but whatever. And so that's why she's always comparing herself, because she always feels like they're in different classes, like quite literally, like, you know, him rich, went to university, has a solid career, her never went to college, has like a cashier job that she just kind of got laid off of, so she feels kind of like a loser. And then it's like them two like kind of like opposites attract kind of relationship. I thought like for the first half of the book, it was like really bad. But then in the second half of the book, I was like, oh, this is kind of cute. And I could understand why people liked it and enjoyed it and gave it like 5 out of 5 stars. But I was like, you can't really, put like 50 pages of a book in the end that makes me go, ah, and try to make me forget about like the other like 250 pages that were awful and that like had 2 characters that I didn't really like. So anyways, that is a very long rant of like why I didn't like You Deserve Each Other. I heard that a lot of people are comparing it to The Hating Game, and I totally get it, because for the first not even half, so I was reading this book through an audiobook, so I already know the percentages, but basically until 70% into the book, you don't get them actually like developing feelings for each other, and it was just a lot of hate. And if you guys didn't watch my previous video where I talked about The Hating Game and my main struggles with actually reading that one, you will also know that I don't like The Hating Game because it had too much hate. And this one had a lot of hate too as well, mixed with a toxic relationship that I didn't care about. And so that's why. So, but with that being said, if you did like The Hating Game, then definitely check out this book, because it might be for you. But for me, I didn't like it. And I was also talking to my friend about this book and saying how this book would have been a lot better and it would make a lot more sense if they weren't in a relationship to begin with, if they didn't date for this long and they were going into marriage. If this was an arranged marriage where they hated each other in the beginning and then they had to fall in love and then they got married, it would make more sense, as opposed to boyfriend girlfriend that used to love each other goes down a road of a marriage where they know that they are doomed. It just doesn't make sense, guys. So I end up giving this one a very low 2.5 out of 5 stars. So enough with my rambling and enough about my ranting of these books that I read. Hopefully this video has given you guys some perspective and some opinions of the novels that I've read and that are on your TBR list, and hopefully you guys make informed decisions. I always struggle with making review videos because I never want to discourage you guys from reading a book that you were highly anticipating because I raged about it and made you feel uncomfortable. Definitely try the book out yourself. Definitely research more and don't take my word for it, and look at more reviews. I am literally one review of the thousands of reviews that are going to happen for the book. But anyways, until next time, I'll see you guys again. Bye.